welcome to another episode of Tell Me More. Today we have Ryan Chandler in the studio, and it's a great episode. We talk about everything from Bonhoeffer to ripped pants, so it's a good one. We hope you enjoy it. Well, hey, it's Tell Me More time. Obviously, the person sitting next to me is not Dr. Wiles. He's on study leave. Party? No, we miss him.
Yeah.
We sometimes joke that, like, we'll party while the boss is away.
No, it's not like that.
But it's not like that.
Yeah, we just wish he was here.
Yeah, we miss him.
But we're glad he's away.
But we have Ryan Chandler.
Bum, 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 bum.
Ryan, say hello for the people listening at home.
Hello. So glad to be here on Tell Me More. I've done this 3 times, I think.
This is your third time.
This is my third time.
It's the charm.
I think so. This is the first video one.
And best we can tell, it's the first one you and I have been in the studio together.
That's correct.
Which could either be the kiss of death and terrible, or the chef's kiss and really, really great.
Based on the pre-podcast banter, I'm going to go with chef's kiss.
Okay. You vote in the comments.
Is this the first Tell Me More after the live one, or was there one in between?
No, we had one in between.
Oh, we did
one last week. Tanner was our guest.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay.
Tanner was our guest, which is always interesting. Luke and I have agreed Tanner did a terrific job, but we miss when the person preaching isn't here. Because the goal is to kind of pull more out of the text and go through what didn't make it for the sermon. But Dr. Wiles preached, then left on sabbatical. And so we had Tanner, which was fun, but we didn't get to go into the sermon as much. So I'm excited about today.
Talking about someone instead of about
it's like if Dr. Wiles was here, ... But today we get to go straight to the source and talk to the Ryan Chandler.
So speaking of the one and only Ryan Chandler, what's happening in your life?
Whoa.
Oh, so many things. We moved in the month of June.
Okay.
We're living
Tell me more.
We're living in Cedar Hill, Texas now.
Further.
A little further from the church,
You
closer
didn't
to
like
Amy's
us.
work.
You didn't like us.
No, that's
you
not
wanted
at
some
all.
Distance.
There's a good house. We just found the right house, the right neighborhood, and so Amy liked it.
Amy is Ryan's wife.
Yeah, she's a
That's
nurse,
some random woman.
school nurse. She works in Mansfield ISD. Her school is by the south part of Joe Pool Lake. So Cedar Hill to her school is real close.
Yeah, so you're right there. Yeah.
So we moved. We also got a dog, a puppy in June. Her name is Tippy. She's a Bernedoodle.
Who got to name Tippy?
It was a family decision.
Okay.
We told Beckham, our oldest, that he could give us name suggestions, but we could veto. So we tried to get down to a list of names that were on the approved list, and then say, okay, now you can. Our one major rule was that the dog's name could not have a human name, because I just think that's weird. You go into somebody's house and they're like, "This is my parakeet,
Alan.
Billy." Yeah. This is our cat, Jonas. And you're like, what? It's just bizarre to me. But if that's you, sorry. And
surely you're stepping on toes right now.
I'm probably the most controversial thing I said. Nothing in my sermon is controversial, but the dog names.
But the after party is going to kill you. Yeah.
Well, you're in good company. This is a doodle-loving table.
I do have a dog named Charlie.
Charlie?
But I didn't name her. She came named.
Oh,
but Charlie is a human name.
Charlie is a human name.
It's the closest I can get.
But it's still kind of in the...
Dog. It's a dog.
Yeah.
Charlie and Cheddar. Those are my pups.
Charlie and Chatter. That's good names for dogs.
Cheddar.
Cheddar. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. That's the other thing Beckham vetoed. He was like, no food names, which I think is so good for a cat named, I don't know, Burrito Cheetah or something. Puff, that's perfect.
What are your dogs' names? Remind me.
We have Albus, from Harry Potter, Albus Dumbledore.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Pepper, who is a poodle.
Pepper the poodle looks a lot like Cheddar the golden doodle.
But she is spicy.
That's the name.
And then we have a cat named Gus.
Gus is the best, too. I would take Gus home with me.
Gus is a great cat. So, what else? You are our young adult minister.
I am.
What's happening in young adult ministry? You started this Worship 817 thing. A lot of our listeners may not know what that is. Tell us a little bit about it.
I think it's crazy, Ryan, that you have not yet been here a year.
Yeah, I haven't been here
a
year.
lot.
After Labor Day.
Yeah.
You've done a lot.
I know. So it's catch us up on what's going on, but also what have you built in the last, 3 days you've been here?
Yeah. So I was in smaller churches before, and in smaller churches, sometimes there's a lot of foundation laying that needs to take place, a lot of infrastructure. So some of the programming takes a little bit longer to get to. So when I got here to First Baptist Church Arlington, we have a lot of foundation. We have a lot of infrastructure that can support programs. So for me, it was really exciting just to go, oh, great, all these ideas that I've stored up for, the past 6 years, I can just kind of put into action, and there's buildings to support that.
Yeah, there's already the health, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a healthy congregation that's excited about these new programs. Even something small like, we have people who'll set up chairs and set up rooms so that you can roll into programs. That's
right?
huge.
Yeah.
And in smaller churches.
Thanks, Audrey.
Yeah, thank you. In smaller churches, that's just a little bit more of a challenge. And so programs and events they take a little bit longer to get off the ground.
So you got to hit the ground running.
I did.
Which is cool.
That's what I felt like hit the ground running. We started a new class called the Launch Class, which is for younger 20s. It's for those people who are coming out of college and they're ready to transition into our young adult ministry, but they need a place to go. We started that in January. It's going really well. It's growing.
My husband's in there.
Yes, that's right.
Not
Ryan
because
Hodges.
he's in the time of transition.
No.
But because that room needed, someone not from the outside, a dad, a mature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They needed somebody with really good theological intuition, pastoral intuition. They've got Stuart Crow in there, who is a event planner and organizer and kind of a people connector.
He texts me ahead of time. Is like, could you teach for us? And it's like months ahead. And I'm like, way to go, man.
Yeah. He's
go.
really good at that.
Yeah.
So it's a really good combination right now.
I like that.
We're going to start a new class. Relaunch a class called The Knot. Which had been meeting before, so we'll get that off the ground in August. We're really excited about.
So for those of you who are newlywed, needing a marriage refresh, or know someone who needs some of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've been saying for the Knot leadership, marriage enrichment.
Okay.
Like we're not.
So like if Ryan and I, in an alternate world where we could go to Sunday school, needed a little tune-up.
Exactly.
We just wanted to spend time focusing on us.
Exactly.
That would be a good class for us to pop into.
2-year type of program, goes through lots of materials. I think one of the things we've been emphasizing in there is it's not only marriage-specific material, it is also just good discipleship that may drive also at application towards marriages. So it's kind of both and. A little bit of marriage, a little bit of discipleship. We have Worship 817, which is the third Tuesday of every month, meets at 7 p.m. in our student building. That is our true young adult ministry. In my mind, y'all know this. I don't know if y'all know this. I divide out young families from young adults. Young adults to me are people who are in their maybe 35 and under who don't have kids. More or less, I just lump them all into, these are our young adults. They have more commonality with each other than somebody with kids. As soon as you have kids, kind of start treating you a little bit more like one of our young families, and the ministries look different. So 817 is targeting specifically our young, maybe they're not married or maybe they're recently married, true young adult people in the community.
And we really did not have a ton going on for that crowd before you got here. So it's really good that we have it. A lot of our guests on Sunday morning are actually that demographic, that young adult demographic, people who don't have kids. We see a lot of them turn up every Sunday. So it's really great to be able to look at them and say, hey, we actually have a lot of really great things going on for you. And this is a great church to be at if you're in your early 20s figuring life out and don't have kids.
And we have more and more need for young adult classes on Sunday morning. We have 2 right now, grad and career, and then the launch class. Both of those classes really, truly are close to being full. And so without having to split a class to create new classes, we could just go ahead and start new classes from all of our guests and our visitors coming in and probably get, I don't know, 3 or 4 more classes, and it wouldn't take that much effort.
Fun to think about.
It is.
It is.
Well, I was just going to say, we're really glad you're here, Ryan.
Thank
At
you.
our church, not in the podcast studio today.
Both. We're glad about both.
Yeah. And by we, I mean just the church. I hear a lot of positive feedback, really on both of y'all. You too, Luke, that you're very loved by our church, and people are glad that y'all are both here. So take that and store it away.
Well, we love y'all. We love our people. So I'm going to move on because praise makes me uncomfortable.
Well, and Ryan got real quiet too.
So
whatever.
Thank you.
Take it. Put it in your diary
Glad
tonight.
to be here as well.
If you wake up in the morning and you have self-doubt, just remember, we love y'all.
Okay,
We're glad
moving
you're
on.
here.
Ryan.
Does this tap into some kind of? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know.
No, let's go. I'm just messing. Yeah.
Moving on. I'm hosting today.
And you're beat red.
Yeah, you are red.
I am.
Like a
It's weird. I can
No,
feel like
do you want
Ryan,
the
you
pants?
told.
The pants? Is that
Yeah,
what
the
you're talking
pants.
about?
So Ryan, you told a story now Ryan's going to turn red. You told a story in contemporary that you did not tell in the classic service, which is not a normal move in our church. Normally you kind of do the same thing in both. So for those
Don't feel slighted though.
Don't feel
He's
slighted.
Just using his discernment.
Yeah. Sometimes different stories for different crowds. But podcast listeners, we trust your maturity. Ryan, tell us a story about your pants.
Okay, so I have a tendency on Sunday mornings to come up with something to go along with my sermon and go, ooh, that would match in really well. So first service, I just didn't think about telling this. That's part of it in y'all service. In hindsight, I thought, well, I don't know if they would have appreciated or laughed at that joke anyway. On Sunday morning, people were talking about this past experience I had. The first time I had preached at First Baptist Church of Arlington. First time.
Which was when? Like late
October,
fall?
I think?
Yeah, that feels,
Yeah, October or November, somewhere around there in the fall.
You brought your ukulele.
I did. It was the ukulele sermon.
But that was not the most memorable part for you.
No, for me. Everybody else is like.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, everybody else is like, oh, I remember the ukulele.
Yeah.
15 minutes before the 11 o'clock service. It's 10:45. I got to go to the restroom. I go into the bathroom. I use the restroom. I just dropped my phone. I bend down to pick my phone up and ripped my pants. Not just a little bit, and I should have clarified this maybe, not the corner of the pocket. I'm talking straight down the back. Straight down the back. Not a little bit, a good 10 inches. And so I'm petrified because I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I live too far to go get anything. Yeah. And so I told my wife, and she's like, shut up. Like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, this is happening. This is live. It's really happening. And I texted Kyle, and Kyle said, well, go up on stage. Let's do a test. And so we did this test where I'm like walking up on the stage and he's trying to look and see. And he's like, oh, I can't really see anything. And Amy and Kyle were like, well, just stay behind the pulpit. And so that was my plan. Stay behind the pulpit.
Okay.
But as I was preaching, I was like, they said they didn't see anything. Why not? So I just jumped out in front of the pulpit and just went for it anyway.
So back up. So you didn't fix the rip?
No, I don't know how to fix a rip. I didn't know. I had no idea what to do. So
you went on stage with no repair being done.
No scotch tape.
Nothing. No clothespin. Safety
nothing.
Pin.
And thankfully, my undergarments also matched the color of the pants, so that probably contributed in a very positive way to the situation.
Not being noticed.
Yeah, so that nobody would notice.
So you didn't just rip your pants before you preached. You preached in ripped pants.
I preached in ripped pants. Yeah, that's a good clarification. Because, what are you going to do? Tie it on like the 90s or something? You can't do anything else.
Yeah, I don't know. I have thoughts on if it were me, but that's not what this is about. So I'm just.
Yeah, so
I'll edit myself. Yeah.
I even thought about adding that sermon on that day, just going up on stage and just being like, hey, just for the record, I ripped my pants.
No.
And so you may, and then I thought, I think all of our preaching professors.
I was going to say, I've got Joel Gregory in my head.
Me too.
Did you take Joel Gregory, Luke? Okay. I had Glower as well, but for preaching too.
Yeah,
hey guys,
Truett
we all went
suddenly.
to Truett. I was going to ask you about Stroop too. I kind of forgot because you mentioned Dr. Stroop at the beginning. We've all taken Stroop and had an affinity and probably had those types of conversations with Stroop at some point. But the discerning, should I not?
Yes.
And I would love to talk about that. But I lost my train of thought. Oh, but Dr. Glower, nope, back up. Dr. Gregory, what he told us in preaching, basically ignore whatever went wrong, on your physical appearance.
That's right.
He told a story about preaching in house shoes because he forgot at a very formal event. He preached in house shoes because he forgot his shoes, but he never drew attention to it.
Yeah.
Because it's just go and do the thing. And if you get up and say, certainly about preparation. Oh, I overslept and this might not be that good. Here's a sermon. It's just a terrible way to kind of tee it up.
Yep.
Same acknowledging
That's what I thought.
You know
just don't even say anything about it.
Yeah.
But this past Sunday morning, Amy was my wife was like, you should share that story. It's funny.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it has nothing to do with the sermon. But then somebody else said, oh my gosh, that's so funny. You should share that. And then Kyle was like, you should tell that story.
Why not?
And so I started thinking about it. I was like, that would be a way to just kind of warm up the crowd. I'm kind of naturally a comedian anyway. So it's why not warm the crowd up a little bit and then get into the sermon. Yeah. And I was surprised they applauded. And
you got a round of applause. I wasn't in the room for that one. I was in the first service.
Out of all the things to clap for, clapping for the ripped pants. Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah.
And made a joke about Dr. Wiles because Dr. Wiles, just imagine him watching from home going, why are they applauding for that? Kind of all the things to applaud for. Applauding for his ripped pants story. But anyways, it was fun.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, Katie, take it away.
Well, I was going to ask about the sermon. I mean, some things about the sermon. Are we ready to go there?
I think so.
Okay.
We brought up Stroop.
We did. You want to start with that? That would be the first thing. Yeah.
So Mike Stroop is a Witness and World Christianity Missions professor at
Formerly
Truett.
Missions.
Yeah, we all had him. He wrote a book about why we shouldn't use that word. That's a huge tangent.
Yeah, he doesn't like the word missions.
So, huge tangent. Yeah. We don't need to go there.
No, one day.
But tell us more about this story of almost moving to the UK and going to ask for advice, knowing the advice you wanted and not getting it.
Yeah.
Hit us with it.
I'd had one class maybe with Dr. Stroop, really loved it. It changed the way I viewed what mission work in the church was supposed to look like. Changed my entire perspective of who we were supposed to be. It was the first time I'd ever heard the idea that mission had more to do with our witness and our character than any kind of technique or curriculum or methodology, program that we were bringing with us. It has more to do with who we are as people. I've never heard that idea before. He asked me to read a book called Transforming Mission by is that Bosch? Yeah.
Bosch. It's a big yellow book.
Yeah, huge
like the famous
yellow
missions book.
Yeah, just changed the way I thought about all that. So he was just my natural first stop when I was trying to decide, do we move overseas?
Like a global decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, you're going to go to Stroop's office.
And that's how Amy and I were approaching it, was really it's going to be like we're missionaries. And really what it was going to feel like is First Baptist Church of the Woodlands was sending us over there
for sure.
To do community mission with this church. I can't even remember where it was. Oh, it was in Swadlincote, England, in the Midlands.
That just means nothing to me.
Yeah, Swadlincote.
You could have made that up.
Yeah, I could have. Yeah, it's in Poppy Dash, England, or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I have a heart for them.
Yes,
so good.
Yes, of course, Poppy Dash.
Pray for the Poppy Dashers.
Yeah, but it was Swadlincote, England, and they needed a pastor. They wanted to do good community mission work. We did a lot of that in the Woodlands. So the pastor there, Bruce Webb, was like, "Go over, do that. I think you'd be good at that."
Yeah, it makes sense why he would tap you for that.
I mean, I was only halfway done with my master's, so that was part of it.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, well, what in the world could I do? Where would I even finish my master's degree? One of the Truett professors was like, "Oh, well, you can go to Oxford." And I was like, "Yeah, right, okay, like that's going to happen." And I thought I was just giggling at that idea. It's like, me at Oxford? There's no way. I barely made it to Truett. There's no way I'm going to make it to Oxford, man. And but the whole idea was just fascinating. I love English culture. My office, even in the Woodlands, was all like kind of English pub soccer themed, because I really like English Premier League soccer. And so football, right? The correct term over there.
We got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know if we weren't nodding along enough.
Yeah. Good.
We understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
English Premier League. I love it. So my office was kind of themed like that.
Yeah. So like this all lines up.
Yeah. I was going, this is so great. This is going to be awesome. Amy was on board. She got pregnant, and it was kind of like pump the brakes.
Ruined everything.
Yeah, right.
Just kidding.
Beckham, in fact, when we were leaving church, Beckham and I were driving together, and Beckham was like, "Hey, Dad, do you think I would have had an English accent if Mom and you had moved to England?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe. You would have had an English accent."
Yeah. All your friends would have been English.
Yeah. His name is Beckham already. It would have been super dope, but...
I studied English in college. Your accent is actually determined by your peer group and not by your parents.
Really? Yeah. See, I was wondering that while we were driving. But anyway, so we were thinking of how fun that would be. That moment was really pivotal, though. And so I still wanted to do it. And Amy was on the fence. So really, I went to Dr. Stroop on Amy's behalf to try to help us discern that together. And I thought I honestly thought in class, we had just read an article in Dr. Stroop's class about how English churches are lacking pastors. There are no pastors in the UK.
It's just lining up. I mean, so everything is aligning. Right?
I did. I thought, oh man, all this is working together. Yeah. And Dr. Stroop just straight up said, no, it's a bad idea. Like he said, you need to stay here and finish your master's. There's going to be plenty of time to jump out in ministry. There's going to be ample time to really get out there and do what the Lord's calling you to do. You need to get the basis right. You really need to understand what ministry is before you just jump out at that. And I know that's a controversial thing maybe for some people who promote like like journeying kind of
hand
years.
in hand more, right?
Yeah, where they say, well, education can wait. Why don't you go ahead and just go into the mission field or go work somewhere and then go back?
Yeah. I did that. I worked 3 years at BSM.
Yeah.
And then went to seminary.
Seminary. See, I know there are people who go either way on those. Yeah. Dr. Stroop, I think part of his story is that I think he was burned in some of his experience. Yeah, jumping into it too quickly, getting hurt, and it led to nearly a crisis of faith. And so he comes back and has to figure some of that out. I think that's the danger side of some of that.
Well, and I bet, knowing Dr. Stroop and his character, it seems that he knew what was right for you in that time. He may have given someone else different advice based on all that they bring and all that they are.
Sure.
It sounds like he was just speaking truth in the moment to you, specific to your situation. Right. It
was perfect for me.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Well, we're glad. Every domino kind of affects everything. So you're here. So we must think it's a pretty good idea.
But how that related to the sermon is I was reading, the parable of the sower, parable of the seeds, parable of the four soils, however you want to.
Conversation's coming next.
Yeah, however you want to title it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that and the emphasis that Jesus places on just listening. I think that's the core message of it. You got to listen to this right. He who has ears, let him hear. Or he has ears to hear, let him hear. Yeah. There's an emphasis on, do you really understand what this is? Because if that word is going to grow and sprout in your life to where you become a fruitful plant or a flourishing plant, you have to make sure that the message you're pursuing is the right message. And so that's why that story from my life kind of stood out to me. That's what I think Dr. Stroop was trying to tell me. You've got to be solidified in this thing really and truly before you just decide to get out there and just start, before you get out there and mess something up. And I think there's a good lesson in that for all of us in just terms of discipleship.
That's good. So you've already kind of alluded to this, and you mentioned it in your sermon that you thought about writing 3 or 4 different sermons and letting the church vote on which sermon you preach that morning. I am personally bummed that you didn't do it.
I do, and I also at some point feel that I need to defend myself.
Yeah, so I knew it. I knew this was going to come up.
You choose
You
when.
made Katie sound like a wet blanket.
No.
Which occasionally I am. No. But in that moment, I was not as,
I'm sure I was not present when you nixed the idea, but I'm sure it was not wet blanket material.
Well, and it was me and Brad, and Brad doesn't get mentioned at all.
Brad wasn't there on Sunday, so I didn't feel like I could jive on him.
And what I said, I wasn't in the room. I didn't hurt you. No. What I said was, I think it's a really fun idea. And I would like you to try it at 817 or at Pastor's Bible Study or just another venue. But I worry that it'll come across too gimmicky, that some people might think you're trying too hard.
Yes.
And you'll lose them before you ever get started. And knowing that you are actually a really good preacher with really good content, you don't need that big gimmick. And I was worried you would lose some people.
No, and that's true. Like, just for y'all know, that meeting was
full.
That meeting was a lot more congenial.
Real story.
The meeting was a lot friendlier than
Brad,
what I made it seem on stage.
And Brad, who is not here to defend himself, but I'll talk. Brad, who can be a little bit buttoned up, and he just wants to make sure we're honoring church tradition, the sacredness of the Sunday service, all that. He was very open to it, but we both were like, I don't know. What do you think? And we ended up on that.
It was part of that good advice for me.
A spiritual decision.
Yes, there we go.
A wet blanket decision.
And I'm the one. And I
really hope that the Choose Your Own Adventure sermon makes its way to fruition at 817 or whatever,
I asked for their advice too. I went to Brad and Katie and said, please help me figure out if this is good or not. Yeah. I think the first sermon I ever preached at First Baptist Church of the Woodlands when I was younger, one of the dads of one of my students came up to me afterwards and he gave me a really big hug and he said, I really liked your sermon. I didn't care for the theatrics though. And so I know that there's this part of me, which is why I sought y'all's advice. There's this part of me to get on stage, and Luke has pointed out to me, you have a preacher voice that comes out sometimes. And I get on stage sometimes and it's like this, like, I don't know, like dance and song show starts up. And so I did want to come off as authentic.
Do you think you just feed off the energy of that live moment?
The lights are on.
The preaching moment.
Yeah, and suddenly it feels like, I was a theater kid growing up. So I think part of it is that. Like there's some, you get on stage and you're having to perform.
but I hadn't put that together.
Yeah, so my mom was my theater teacher, so I grew up doing theater and like oral reading and poetry, UIL, and so
there it is.
There's part of me that has to pull some of that back. Yeah. So that's why I saw Children's Vice, because I didn't want it to be a
performance
gimmick I didn't want it to be like, wow, this guy's trying way too hard.
My worry is that people would see it as he's trying too hard.
Yeah.
When you don't need to, because you're a good preacher.
Yeah.
You know.
I do think it's a fascinating idea in the passage, though.
Okay, but you had a theological undergirding for it too.
That's correct too.
It's not like you were just trying to like captivate people.
That's right.
So go ahead.
Okay, so in the multiverse of sermons, you were going to preach multiple sermons because...
Well, the parable itself, it's just the nature of all parables. You can, and this is a phrase Katy said, but it's like a prism. Each parable you can look at from all these different angles, and you can discern something different about what Jesus is saying that means something different to who we're supposed to be today. And I think the parable of the sower is one of those really good examples.
So you preached it as the parable of the soils.
Yes.
You could do it as the parable of the seed. So give us a
And I'm thinking about now that you've said that, I guess you repeated my words, which is, whatever. But like in Luke, it's not the wayward son. What am I trying to say?
Prodigal son. Luke 15.
That has different angles.
Exactly.
Right?
Father, younger son, older brother.
Older brother is a lot of us. So, I mean, there's a lot there. So anyway, that's another example of a parable that you can look at from different angles if you wanted to and choose how to preach it. So, okay, but given the one that we have in Mark 4.
How would you have preached in like 2 minutes parable of the sower?
I think if I had have preached it from the angle of the parable of the sower, first off, Jesus in his explanation never says, "Oh, I'm the sower."
No, that's left up to interpretation.
That's right. That's one of those. If Jesus wanted us to think of him as the sower, I think he would have said that in his but he never does.
So it could be us.
It could be us. So we could kind of see ourselves
We would be the sowers of the gospel.
That's
Is that
correct.
right?
We're the sowers of the seed. And the sower is not concerned with the status of the soil before he spreads the seed there. And I thought that would have been a good angle to take.
Yeah, the sower sows the seed liberally and is never condemned for it.
That's right. I think on stage I said nilly-willy, and that was the phrase I used. The sower, he's just scattering
I've heard
seed
it
out
willy-nilly.
there. You've heard of Willie from Missouri. You know nilly-willy.
Willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly. Okay.
Was that a person?
Yeah.
Is that a Texas thing? That's
Willy-nilly?
No idea.
You say nilly-willy in Texas?
I think it's nilly-willy.
I think now that I'm hearing both, I think it's willy-nilly.
It is willy-nilly.
It can't be willy-nilly.
I'm from the Midwest. We have the standard accent for the country. It's willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly's the guy down at the convenience store. That's who willy-nilly is.
The sower scatters the seed.
Liberally.
A little willy-nilly. Yeah, it's willy-nilly.
Higgledy-piggledy.
Higgledy-piggledy. Yes. The sower throws it out there.
Yeah.
He does not worry about, well, what's the condition of this soil? Is the seed going to survive there? Is the seed going to grow there?
Good.
He doesn't look for potential. And I think sometimes, especially in the modern American church, when we tend to go, who are the people we want leading with us or working with us, we tend to kind of judge people by very business-like American standards. Are they charismatic?
We want it so efficiently.
Exactly. Can they attract people? Are they effective communicators? And we look at them in all these different things.
Yeah.
Jesus really looks at us in terms of, are they faithful or not? Not can they draw a crowd? And so I just like this idea of the sower going out, going, everybody gets to receive the seed. The responsibility of the growth is left to the Holy Spirit. That the responsibility for how that grows is not up to us. It's only our responsibility to put it out there. That's one angle we could have taken if we were going to do it from the perspective of the sower.
Okay, tell us a parable. Preach the parable of the seed.
I think the parable of the seed is probably the one that I was struggling with the most if I was trying to flesh that out. Okay. I was going to talk about that in terms of what is the actual message that we're planting out here. What is the gospel? What is that evangelistic message that we share that can give birth or rise to some kind of flourishing? If we're going to go out and spread the seed, what seed are we spreading? That was going to be the emphasis on the second one.
Then let me ask, what would you say is the gospel, Ryan?
The gospel message, that core gospel message, is Jesus coming to make his dwelling among us. God coming, making his dwelling here with us, fulfilling those promises that God made to Israel in the Old Testament, reversing everything that we thought about the Messiah, dying for us, dying to become king, so that we could step into this kingdom and continue that work until he comes to rescue us again. That, I think, is the gospel message. We're stuck.
That's the good news.
That's the good news. We're stuck in the old, present, evil age. Jesus came to die and inaugurate the new age. God makes his dwelling here among us again, and then he promises to return to us.
And invites us to be a part of it.
Yeah, and we're supposed to carry on that work. Believe in that message, certainly, but spread that message to everybody else. There's lots of implications to the gospel, and I think the implications a lot of the time are as important as the gospel message itself. I think if the implications of the gospel, like social justice and women in roles of leadership and equality, some of those implications of the gospel, if those don't matter, then the gospel is powerless. But nonetheless, I think there is a core gospel message that affects all these other areas of our life.
Well, good job. All of those would have been really good sermons. I like the one you preached.
Thank you.
So one of the things that you talked about was you said, if you're going to follow Jesus, you have to have a high pain tolerance. And I was hoping that you could flesh that out more for us here on the podcast.
Sure.
Because here's the background. I know, you may not know, Ryan is pursuing his demon at Truett, and his
That's a doctorate of
ministry,
which is
He's
ironically called
not-
a demon.
Yeah, not a demon.
He doesn't have a demon.
This is not this demon.
I'll be preaching about that on
Doctorate
Sunday.
of ministry,
Yeah.
demons next week.
Demons. We've talked about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. But your research is about Bonhoeffer and Dietrich Bonhoeffer and discipleship in the church.
Yes.
And so when I heard you say that, I immediately in my background, I'm going, oh, Ryan's pulling on his Bonhoeffer.
I am.
So I was hoping you could kind of flesh that out a little bit more for us here on the podcast.
In his book, Discipleship.
What do you love about Bonhoeffer?
I love that.
Back it up.
One, I love
Who's
that.
Bonhoeffer?
Yeah, Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Is that willy-nilly?
Yeah, that's not willy-nilly. That's
Yeah.
Willy-nilly's cousin. And in Germany, it would be Willy-nilly. And
Das stimmt.
yeah, Willy-nilly. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German theologian and pastor. He was in Germany while Hitler was taking over Germany. He was involved in a counter-church revolution to not only withstand the things that Hitler's regime was telling the church they had to do. That was part of that resistance movement.
You had a state church that Hitler effectively took control of.
Yes, the state church, they were pushing against that. Bonhoeffer was also not saying not only, yes, we have to resist what Hitler wants the church to do, but we also have an obligation to care for the poor and the outcast and the lowly. And in our context, that means the Jewish people. It's a perspective that Bonhoeffer picked up actually while he was in New York City. He spent time studying at Union Theological Seminary. He went to Harlem and spent some time at a church called Abyssinian Baptist Church, which is a historic black church in Harlem. And he was a Bible study teacher there. And he gained a perspective of what a black person's experience was in the United States. He even traveled south and tried to experience some of the South, went through Waco, Texas, down to Mexico. And that unique experience he takes back with him to Germany and says, hey, we have an obligation to care for people who are being oppressed. And that's the Jewish people. And that was what made Bonhoeffer, even in the resistant church, a radical in the radical movement against Hitler. He winds up going to a concentration camp and being hung there just a few days before it was liberated, actually. So he's a martyr. His particular area of interest was, what does it mean to be the church? What does it mean to be in the community of Christ? That means something special. It means more than just showing up. It means participation. And but there's also something mystical that happens when we gather together as the body of Christ. Like Christ makes his physical presence known there through our being Christ for one another. And so that's part of his unique perspective on what it means to be the church. In Discipleship, he writes about the difference between two types of graces, costly grace and cheap grace. And cheap grace, for example, in one of his writings, he'll say, cheap grace is offering forgiveness without repentance. So cheap grace is, oh, sorry. Oh, okay, that's okay. without there being some kind of true repentance, which is turning from our sin, true confession of sin, and being held to accountability, then there is no actual grace taking place. So it's a very hard route, or maybe from an American's perspective, a hard way for us to view what grace and Christianity and faith really is. And so as I've read Bonhoeffer and reflected on that, I've come to see how true that is, that if we want to experience just this grace of Christ and we want to experience the goodness that he offers, we have to participate in that. And what that looks like is actually taking Jesus seriously and trying to follow Jesus's teachings. Like actually saying, Jesus said, forgive people who have deeply wounded me. And I'm actually going to do that. So that was Bonhoeffer's kind of form of discipleship. Seeing, like, in my dissertation I've been writing.
There were air quotes for those listening.
And not
watching.
I wrote, like, you could sum up Bonhoeffer's vision of discipleship in the same way that Nike does their slogan, just do it. Like, that's his version of discipleship. You've got to do the things Jesus says that you need to do if you want to know what it is to be a disciple.
And so that led you to say on Sunday morning, if you want to follow Jesus, you have to have a high pain tolerance. That doesn't mean like you're good with needles. It means
means that when you're wrong, you have to go to somebody and say, I'm wrong and I've been sinning against you, and that hurts, and I'm sorry I've done that. If you're in a position of leadership in the church, certainly, I think what that means when you screw up really badly is stepping down, even if that means for a season, saying, I'm actually going to own up to the sin that I've committed in my life and try to address that before I just run into some sort of ministry somewhere else. It means taking seriously Jesus's commands, and that hurts. It hurts to forgive somebody. It hurts to say, man, I really messed up. It hurts to be generous with our wallet and give money when we don't have it. Discipleship hurts. In the context of my sermon, I was applying it specifically to seasons of life that are rockier than others. When we experience a life circumstance that makes us question God's goodness in our life. In my family growing up, we had but quite a bit of dysfunction in certain areas. And I don't want to get all into that in case my mom's listening or something. But
this is somewhat public.
And so, but our family's been through a lot of really hard things. And I remember asking my mom one day, this wasn't too long ago. I remember asking my mom, because of all the hard things you've been through, I said, when I think of all the hard things you've been through in your life, I asked her, how is it that you still believe in Jesus? Like, honestly, like, she's been through so much. I was like, how is it that you actually believe in Jesus still at this point? And I think there's a lot of people who just go through life circumstances that really shake their faith, really shake their concept of who God is, and can hit those moments where they really start going, you know what? I don't know if what I believe about God is right. I hear all this stuff at church and it sounds flowery and wonderful, but I don't feel it and I'm not experiencing it. Who is God really? And so if we're going to pursue God all the way to the ends of our lives, and we're going to continue to say, man, I'm going to follow Jesus no matter what, which is what discipleship is. It's following Jesus. It's going to require a high pain tolerance. My mom's answer, by the way, if you want to know.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, my mom's answer was,
kind of waiting for it.
After all the bad stuff I've been through, and I've seen how God has got me through them, how could I not believe in Jesus? That was my mom's answer.
That's a great answer.
She sounds cool.
Yeah, she's a great lady.
Yep.
Well, I don't have any more questions.
We can keep chatting, but that's a very good way to end.
Okay.
And I think
we have 16 hours left of space on the memory card, so we can keep going.
I think that we've covered quite a lot.
We have.
Truly, and it's been really good, and I've enjoyed it. So
from Rip Pants all the way to Bonhoeffer, like this.
Wow.
This podcast has it all.
Okay,
it does.
We could just that could be the intro.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking about next week. I'm preaching, obviously.
Yeah. What are you
but
preaching
we may
on?
have you back because then we could flip. What do you think about that?
That sounds fun, Ryan.
Can you give us a taste, like a pre-taste?
Well, the text is incredible. and we talked about it.
Always a good
Ryan
thing
and
to
I
say
talked
about the
about it.
gospel.
Yeah, well, one, it's a gospel, and I've been preaching weird stuff lately. Like the past
I heard
5 Sunday morning sermons I've preached were, I think I preached from Romans this last one. But before that, it was like Ecclesiastes, some really downer Psalms, just some weird.
Judges 19.
It's all like the care minister angle, like we were preaching through Psalm 23, and I literally got, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Like that was my text. It's like, of course I did, So, and then it was a Psalms of Lament, and then it was, anyway. So I'm excited to be back in the gospel and preach a narrative of Jesus because they're so rich, right? There's so much. It's the Gerasene demoniac. So it's, Jesus and his disciples go into
kind of demon.
Gentile. Yeah, we're talking about demons. They go into the Gentile territory. They find a man who is tormented by, when Jesus says, "What's your name?" that they say, "I am Legion, for we are many."
Legion.
I mean, it's just rich, right, with imagery and. Anyway, the part that's captivated me the most is that toward the end. It's a long passage, but the guy is freed from his demons, and they go into the swine, and the swine go into the sea, and he wants to go with Jesus. Jesus just changed his whole life, and he says, "Jesus, I want to go with you. I want to follow you." And Jesus says, "Nope. I want you to stay here. I want you to stay here and go tell your people," which I think is just. I'll probably camp out more if I had to prophesy where I'll end up on Sunday or Saturday night. I'm kind of a Saturday night.
I can't wait.
It all comes together for me.
I'm excited about it too.
Well, it's a great text, and I think if Ryan, you choose to join us again next week, there's a lot to talk about.
I'd be honored.
It'll be fun.
Okay. Well, we will see you all next week.
Luke and I'll talk off mic if that's really what we want to do.
I think you made the cut.
Thank you.
But thanks for listening, everyone. It's always a great time. Support Ryan's ministry. Pray for him. Pray for our young adults. We are seeing a good number of them come to visit our church. Which
and you can invite them. You can
encouraging.
invite the young adults in your life, and we will try our very best not to embarrass you in your church.
Yeah. Okay. Next week, everyone.
Blessings.
Thanks for listening to the Tell Me More podcast today. You can subscribe to this podcast on your app of choice, or you can visit us at fbca.org to find out more information about the podcast and our church. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.